Um, why don't we start? I think last time you were here, we covered, a lot of the more broad issues that were shaping up in the campaign and the primary. Things have gotten more specific now that we've gotten into the general election season, and I wonder, why don't we start by, I think the big thing that's going around now, that kind of the tone of the campaign has come up. You have Mike Coffey now says, I'm independent. Mike Houston, I'm independent. You've talked a lot about kind of the old connected network in politics, and it's gone back and forth. Tell us a little bit about where you see yourself as far as, I know you've talked about the degree of independence that you have. Can you talk a little bit about that now? Because there's been some criticism about, out-of-town fundraising in your campaign.
From the very beginning of this campaign, I said things that you've said. I mean, I got into this race because, in large part, because of my 20 years of being in this community and bumping up against exactly what you're talking about, and insider politics, and I bumped up against it in my work with the schools. I bumped up against it in my work with community groups and governing boards that I've been on. I bumped up against it, and I bumped up against it at the city as well. So I'm not new to it, and I've made it very clear from the beginning of my campaign that is one of the primary things that I feel like keeps Springfield from moving forward. What has unfolded, I think, or has illustrated itself, is just exactly that over the last several weeks, or actually longer, but maybe some of the other stuff was less visible. But this is just more of the same. And now I have no idea where my opponents are. I don't know who's an independent. I don't know who's a Republican. The truth is that Mike Houston was a Republican from the beginning. He could call himself an independent. He didn't get the endorsement of the Republican Party, but he sought it, and he's run for election, I think, 6 times, and as a Republican. So he's a Republican. Now, I'm a Democrat. I've said I'm a Democrat. I've never hidden that from the day one of this campaign. I've never said that I'm anything but a Democrat. And, I continue to say that. In terms of my support is, again, this message is a message that I have said consistently at my fundraisers, at my, meetings with people throughout, that we need to change the way we do business in Springfield, and that I will bring a different way of doing things. The people who are supporting me, I believe, are supporting me because of that message. And there's I'm proud of the campaign that we've run. It's an aggressive campaign. I said from day one I was in this to win, and we're pulling together. I've pulled together a team and that is doing great work and running an aggressive campaign, a competitive campaign. Over 90%, over 95% of the money that I have raised in this race has come from the Springfield area.
Not the money, the contributors.
The number of contributors.
Right.
Thank you, Bernie. You're right.
Yeah, the money.
You're right. I mean, it's skewed in terms of the larger amounts.
Or from Caterpillar.
It wasn't from Caterpillar.
Mrs. Caterpillar.
Yeah, Mrs. Caterpillar, who gives a lot of money to women candidates.
And Aaron Schock.
And others. I mean, but I think from what my understanding is that she supports women candidates. And Republican
never
and
talked to her.
Democrat.
They just told you that. I mean, she supports all kinds of candidates.
Yeah, she supports, all kinds of candidates. There's a lot of people out there that support candidates. I myself have supported candidates that I don't know. And, there are people in Springfield that have supported me that I don't know directly. There's many people. You get people talk to others. Someone talks to them about, hey, I think this person is, the type that we need, blah, blah, blah. And that's how you build your fundraising network. So, I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and we're running a competitive race, and we're going to continue to do so. And I've now, gotten labor support, which is going to be helpful. And
Who'd you get?
I've gotten,
Oh,
Springfield Trades and
Right,
Labor.
right.
I've been endorsed by AFSCME, Local 31. The IFT has endorsed me. I've gotten some financial support from some other ones as well. So, it's continuing to grow.
If I could, go ahead, John.
Well, let's talk about, the labor endorsement obviously was a fairly large one that came in. We had the story. The question is, as mayor, if you're elected, you're going to have to make some tough choices potentially about staffing, and a lot of
Sure.
those staffing choices do involve organized labor.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to have an impact on how you're able to manage as mayor?
Again, they're supporting me because of my message. My message isn't changing because of their support. So I have said from day one of this campaign, we've all said, let's be honest, that we have to live within our means, and we're going to have to make tough choices, and there's going to have to be budget cuts. But I have also said, and said it loud and clear, and I've said it to the labor unions, a message that I think they like, that I'm going to focus my cost cutting at the managerial and supervisory levels. And that's where we're going to emphasize there. We're going to look at consolidation of departments. I've already proposed one, and I think that there could be more. And we're going to look at consolidating functions and looking at running government more efficiently. Is that going to also affect probably some union positions too? Absolutely. I think that's true. But I think that what they're looking for is that it isn't just always concentrated just at the bottom. They're looking for some fairness, and I agree with that. And I will do that as mayor.
Well, let's be honest. Most of the money is in rank and file city workers, and the previous mayor gave out 3% and 4% raises in the middle of a recession. We were well into the recession in 2008 when those raises were given out. Can you tell us today that you'll seek some kind of pay freeze for union workers as we go forward?
No, I can't tell you that today. There's a lot of specifics that I don't feel like I can say today. I think, I can memorize a lot of bullet points and statistics and spit those out in a campaign like I think a lot of my opponents have done. I'm really a more I have a different approach. I'm a more thoughtful person. I don't make statements without having a full body of information behind me. And the truth is, even though there's a lot of stuff on the internet and there's some stuff, there's a lot of information that as a candidate you just do not have access to. So I am not. I don't feel that I'm going to make a lot of promises or a lot of specific statements about who's going to stay or who's going to go or where, it's specifically where cuts are going to be. I've said that we're going to get in. The first order of business is I'm going to direct all the department directors and to, engage in a 60-day or a top-to-bottom agency management review and get that back to me within 60 days, and we'll go from there. We'll see what those recommendations are. That I want them to be, in the course of that review, I want them to be talking to their workers. I want them to be talking to stakeholders that utilize services. I want to be able to look at what it is that we do, how we do it, how we can do it better, what are our goals. I don't think government doesn't set a lot of goals, in my opinion. I've been working in goal setting for my whole life. For 28 years, I've worked in and around public policy. And I've written grants, I've done a lot of that kind of work. And you have to have plans, you have to have directions, you have to have vision, you have to have goals, and then you have to have measurements for how you achieve those goals. Government kind of, my experience at least, and I've had a lot of it, is pretty reactive. We kind of run around day to day, and it's crisis oriented. And there's a part of that is just natural, that just happens, and you have to be able to respond to crisis. But there's also, I think, on the days when you're not running around, dealing with crisis, I want my department directors to be, establishing what it is that we should be doing, and then measuring ourselves against those goals, and making that information available to the public, making making reports to the city council, providing that kind of information.
Can you give any indication who would be in your inner circle? Because by not doing so, by not saying who any of your directors would be or any of your top advisors would be, there's a vacuum there and people don't know and just think maybe it'll be your campaign team.
No, and it's not going to be my
So who will
campaign
it be?
team. I think it'll be, there are so many people that I have interacted with over this campaign. And many of whom, I've known over the 20 years, but some of whom I haven't seen in 10 years. I mean, people that, I've met just all over, social service agencies. There are some wonderfully talented people in this community. I haven't given a lot of thought to who my transition team will be, if that's what you're referring to, because I
Either
will
that
obviously have a
or
transition team
an
or
executive
whatever.
assistant or a deputy mayor or a director of anything
I
or a
just
search
really-
committee leader.
I haven't really given that thought in terms of specifics. It's not going to be. It would not. What I can tell you is it's not going to be the exact same people that are on my campaign team.
Because one of the things that troubles the people who keep hearing you say the old way of business is no good, I'm not part of that. The 2 times I saw you speak at Democratic Committee call, Bill Houlihan was there, or I was there, and then one time you spoke for you, and maybe that was the third or whatever.
I think it was because I was doing a forum.
You were, and I'm not. No, you were prepared for. No, I'm not.
I would have spoken for myself.
I'm not saying
but-
that's a bad thing, and I'm not. And I have great respect for Bill, his knowledge, his political and people skills, the whole thing. But he was Democratic County Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
As such, he was on the sewer board, which was one of the perks Democratic County Chairman got. When he got off, his wife was on because she had an illness, and the insurance there paid for it. When they tried to kick her off, he and she made a big stink through my column that they're trying to kick Cindy off the sewer board, which will lose her insurance, and that's a terrible thing. Is that not just the kind of thing you don't like? And isn't he
Bernie,
one
I
of
don't
your
know
tough
anything
guys?
about that. I've
Well,
never heard
it was all in the
anything
paper
about it.
like 10 years ago.
Well, I
you lived here.
must have missed that one 10 years ago.
I mean-
I didn't know anything about that. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances around that issue at all. And something that happened 10 years ago on the sewer board between Bill and Cindy and you, I don't know if that's
and the public.
in the public. I mean, if that's relative. Bill Houlihan has been a friend of mine for a long time. Our kids grew up together. We went to soccer games together. Our kids are the exact same ages. My son is the same age as his 3 triplets, and his 3, and then my daughter and his youngest we're very good friends. Neil's been to my house many, many times. They are close friends, and I got to know Bill and Cindy really through the kids mostly. I mean, when I first got to know Bill Houlihan, I think I met Bill Houlihan first at the Colony West Swim Club or something. I didn't even know who he was. And then, but Bill Houlihan's been a good friend, and he's been a close mentor of mine, and he's been an enormous supporter of mine over the years. When Bill Houlihan, when I ran for school board, I mean, I'll never forget this. I didn't, again, I knew Bill as, but I didn't know him. When I ran for school board, I wasn't really active in Democratic politics. But someone had said, talk to Bill Houlihan. He knows, the guy knows every precinct in town. He can pull out, information that's pretty impressive. And when, on the night of my campaign, he was at my house watching the returns come in for me. And that was when Davlin was winning, and there was, everybody was down at Chantilly Lace or whatever it was, and the whole town and all the Democrats were, just celebrating and going crazy. Bill Houlihan was sitting in my house, and I'll never forget that. I mean, he was there supportive of me, and it's that kind of person that I think Bill Houlihan is, and the connection, I guess, that keeps getting made to Durbin, then as though Durbin is somehow a dirty word in this town. I don't share that view. I never have, and I don't think I will. I mean, up to this point, I have always supported Senator Durbin. I think he's a respectable man. I think he's a highly influential man that has done an awful lot for this community, and he lives here. He lives here. Everybody keeps saying it's the Chicago way. I don't understand that. He lives here. He's from Springfield.
Well, some of the law firms that he's called in Alton and Chicago, Clifford Law Office, one of the biggest personal injury firms in the city, donated to you because, I mean, Senator Durbin just said the other day that, well, I ask people and they're friends of mine, and I say I have a good candidate.
I also grew up in Chicago. I mean,
Bolton.
Thank you. Dalton. I mean, south suburbs of Chicago. I've worked in Chicago most of my, till I left. I mean, I'm from Chicago too, originally. So, I just think, obviously the concern is, I think what I'm hearing, you say and others say, is that influence is going to, be running the government or be running me. And I think that I've proven in this community, if anybody's paid attention, that, I've been a pretty independent person, and I have always gone my own way. I've done it my whole life. I've never asked a favor out of anybody my whole life. I have never had anything given to me or handed to me, and I've been a pretty independent thinker. And I've gone up against a lot of entrenched, connected people in this town, and I've stood my ground, and I've spoken out, and I've advocated for what I believe in, and I've stayed with my
Can you give an
course.
example of that? When did you stand up to an entrenched somebody that wanted something that you didn't want?
Oh my gosh, how many times did I speak out in front of the school board about
About
whatever was being done at the time?
particular issue?
Against Bob Hill, against the charter school, when they were not against the charter school, but the way the charter school finances were being presented to the public. There's a number of things. I stood up. I was the only. You probably don't want this in the paper, but of that facilities committee, I was on that facilities committee for 3 years. I was involved in it before it ever happened. There were, they claimed there were 60 people involved throughout the process, throughout the whole time. I was there throughout the whole thing. And I consistently, throughout that entire process, asked, and over and over and over again, asked that the process reflect or include options for keeping Springfield High School where it was. And it just never happened. 3 years we went through that, and I every meeting I stood up and said, can I just see some plans? Can we just discuss this? Can we discuss the impact of this on the broader community? Can we discuss, consistently. I've been in meetings, those meetings and others, where, I would sit down at a table and no one would sit with me. I've done it for 20 years.
So you lost that one on the.
I lost that one.
Because you're opposed to the West Side School.
I wasn't ever opposed to the West Side School. All I wanted was in the process to have a substantive discussion about what it would be like if we kept Springfield High School where it was. I wanted the information. I wanted to have enough information where I felt like I could make an appropriate decision. And, again, I was on that thing from the beginning. There are interests that have been pushing that West Side School for 20 years.
And are they evil interests, or who are they?
No, they're not necessarily evil interests, but they're one-sided interests. They're narrow interests. All I wanted to do was say, let's hear from the broader community. Let's see what this is going to have an impact on the broader community. How are the other parts of town going to think about this? What's the impact on the historic building? What's the impact? Can we do? Let's look at the environmental impact. Let's look at. I just wanted some information. Can it be done? I couldn't even get them to put it out on paper. Can it be done?
If you're running for mayor, shouldn't you be the leader to tell a small group, get this done? How come you lost that one?
Because there was. Oh, come on, Bernie. There were 60 people on the committee, and at the end, when the vote happened, it was 33-3, and I was one of the 3. And I'm not going to tell you who the other 2 are. One of them wasn't even a voting person, wasn't supposed to be voting. So it was one other person.
Now that's the Chicago way. No, just kidding.
Yeah, but they let them vote because they knew they were going to win it anyway.
Let's talk about.
I'm done.
Okay. But why don't we talk about Mayor Edwards now is, for someone who's a temporary mayor, he's been pretty aggressive as far as getting some things set up, and he is appears to be ready to go to war with the fire department over his the minimum staffing requirement. What are your thoughts on what he's doing now? Do you agree with reducing the minimum staffing from 49 to 46? And if you're elected mayor, do you envision a time when we have to close a fire station to save money? Just in general, what are your thoughts on that, where we're going?
Well, let me say first that when Mayor Edwards came in, under tragic circumstances, as we all know. I was very reluctant to, criticize. I was very, anytime I was asked, I said I think we need to support Mayor Edwards. He's coming in under difficult circumstances, and I believe that. And I was, I kept my tongue really for quite some time. He also said as he came in that he was going to warm the seat, and that he was going to be there to. I think those were his words, warm the seat. And I felt like, and I think I publicly said, I think that's a good strategy. You've got another mayor. We know there's going to be a new mayor coming in. So we obviously have this interim period that needs to be dealt with. But he didn't he hasn't, he did for maybe a month or so, and then he started getting, very assertive and very, putting Dove in there as the executive assistant and all this kind of stuff. I was concerned about that as well, because it began to look like, we've really got the legislative branch actually in the executive branch, and then they're going back to the legislative branch. It's kind of a little confusing, I think, but again, if he was just in there to warm the seat and just keep things going, I was okay with that. I think, he's become, more aggressive. I'm not sure what the motivation is for him to take on the fire department at this point. I think it's a mistake. I think, I think it's just generally a mistake that we are always in this adversarial positions with our employees, with our labor groups, with our, between the mayor, the alderman. It's always this divisive kind of approach. I don't want to take that kind of approach. I understand that there's going to be, that we're not always going to agree. But coming in, in terms of the minimum manning, or in terms of, I think there are some reasonable suggestions that we need to look at doing some different things in the fire department. I would hope that they even reasonably understand that. Some of the recommendations that came out in the Blue Ribbon Commission that, talked about and analyzed their calls for service and all that kind of stuff. I think all that needs to be looked at. I think we need to modernize our fire department. If 95% of our calls, are actually medical calls versus fire calls, it does seem a little ridiculous that we're taking these rigs out, every single day in and out, and, what are the solutions to that? I don't know. I'd like to look at what other communities are doing. Should we be buying, instead of buying more rigs, should we be buying, smaller trucks that are more focused on, medical related, kinds of responses, as opposed, it seems like if it's a 95 percentile medical response, then we should be looking at targeting, modernizing our department in that direction. And I'm sure there's a number of suggestions that'll come up with that. But, again, I'm going to get in there and I want to sit down with the people at the table. I can't make these decisions in what I consider to be in a vacuum out here, when I haven't had a chance to sit and talk with the unions, when I haven't had a chance to talk with the management, when I haven't had a chance to be in there and examine the data and look at the issue from a broader perspective. And as far as the fire stations go, I remember even when I was there, discussions and mapping out of where the fire stations were and, the proximity and how close some are to others. And yeah, I think that again, I'm not going to make any promises that we're going to do that, but I think that's reasonable. I think we're going to have to you have to do that over, as your city grows and changes, you're going to have to always kind of relook at how it's being functioning now and where they're going to be. Now, am I going to say that I'm going to close fire stations or which ones or whatever? I'm not prepared to say that. But I do think it needs to be examined. If we've got some sections of town that, have fire stations that are very close and their response time is, whatever, and out at the southwest, it's 2 minutes response time, and then out in the southwest it's 25 minutes response time, then that's not equitable. And so we're going to have to look at how we do that. If we keep, I've been opposed to, continuing to keep spreading our resources out to the outer fringes of our community. But we're out there now. You can't, now that Piper Glen's out there and now that Panther Creek's out there, you can't just say, oh, well, okay, guys, I guess you guys don't get fire protection. I don't think that's fair.
But at the same time, there's substantial amounts of overtime that something has to happen with the fire department. And I guess my question is, since a lot of the role would be, if you were to take the office, is going to be how do we get the budget in some sort of
Absolutely.
magic format. That's a huge chunk of it. How are you going to fix it? I mean, I'm unclear exactly how you're going to be able to sort of address that.
Well,
Because,
I can't believe that this is the only strategy to fix it.
okay.
I mean, I think there are probably a lot of other strategies that we can look at, and some of which the fire department has put on the table themselves that they claim have been ignored. Now, again, I don't know. I've not seen the list of that. I wasn't privy to the negotiations that went on previously. I wasn't sitting at those tables. I don't know, all the different things, but I can tell you that they feel that they put out a lot of suggestions that were ignored. I don't know why that would be. I don't know if they were not good suggestions. I don't know if they didn't save enough money. I don't know if they were, that they were inconsistent with what the other unions were doing. So there was a uncomfortableness for doing one thing here and doing something else there. I mean, again, I think that, but I think coming in and just sort of, taking them on as though they're as though our fire department are the evil, the bad guys in this whole process. And there's been a lot of this. It's been happening from the national level all the way down, and now it's trickling down to the local level. I'm not that kind of an ideologue. I don't believe that. I don't believe that our firefighters are bad guys that are, ripping off our community. I just don't believe it. Now, do they have a great lobby that have gotten them some really good,
Pension.
good pensions and stuff? I would say that they do. They obviously do. And, again, people, I think, you think about, fire protection and you think of them as sort of sitting around waiting for the fire, alarm to go off, and there's all these guys sitting around. And,
We can see them cooking burgers over there.
yeah, and they've got, one thing I would say, I drove by the other day, and they've got their lawn chairs out in front of them. I thought, maybe the lawn chairs should go, but it just doesn't give a good perception. But then, when we need something in this community, and when, no one's, I don't know, I'm getting into something that's not, but I watch as much as I can, the little bits about the tsunami and the what's going on in Japan, and every time we have one of these disasters, and when these disasters come and you see these first responders walking in while everyone else is walking out, I think it reminds you that we want to have some really well-trained, good, happy, productive people that are in our police and our fire. And I think we need to be supporting them. Now, do they need to be making sacrifices too? Absolutely.
Because Frank Edwards will make the point that you're not seeing nearly as much drama with the police department, and their ranks have been thinned down too. They've consistently dropped the number of sworn officers that they have on the streets. They've been able to do that without a lot of hullabaloo, but then with the fire departments, his point is that they've never really given an inch on any of this.
Well, he was fire chief for how long? So I mean, he obviously didn't get it done then either. He was benefiting from whatever it was that they the arrangements then. So again, I think there's some truth to that. I think that again, a lot of it's perception. I'm not in there yet. I need to sit down with these groups and talk to these groups and find out more and be part of the negotiations. I just think it's difficult. You hear a lot of things, and I have heard that fire is one of the biggest holdouts, I suppose.
Have you talked to the leadership of the firefighters?
I talked to their one of their meetings, and I've talked to in sort of an informal kind of a conversation with the head of the fire. Is it Tony Burton?
I think they ended up endorsing an opponent.
Yeah. But I mean, I had some kind, but again, it was kind of informal, but enough of a talk to kind of hear their frustrations. And so again, I just don't think that we're going to get anywhere in our city if we're constantly pitting one group against the other, or making one group look like they're the problem, they're the bad guys. But at the same time, people are going to have to make sacrifices, and it's going to be made, and in my administration, it's going to be made at the top, and it's going to have to be made all the way down as well.
I have a question I want to ask that we didn't get time for last night. Everybody's against taxes. Nobody's going to raise their taxes, which is also what Tim Davlin said. But aside from that, CWLP in 2008, they came and they asked for a big water